Hi maths students, it's Mr. Hajgassim here, and today we're going to learn about the equation of a straight line. Now, what is the equation of a straight line? So the equation of a straight line is written in the form of y is equal to mx plus c. Now, what does this mean? Well, m is the gradient of our line, and c is the y-intercept of our line. Now the gradient, we'll focus on that in another lesson, but the gradient is essentially the steepness of our line, or we can think about it as the change in y divided by the change in x. And we'll focus on that a little bit more during this lesson, but a full lesson will be done on another day. Now, so key points that I just mentioned, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. Now, what does the y-intercept mean? So that's the point at which our graph or our line will intercept the y-axis. So if we have a look at this graph over here, the equation of the line is y equals 2x plus 1. So the gradient of our line is going to be m, which is 2. So I will just highlight that. So this is going to be our gradient, and plus 1 is going to be c, the point at which we intersect the y-axis. So this is going to be c, and m is going to be 2. So the gradient is 2 and the y-intercept is 1. And if we have a look at this coordinate here, this is the point at which our graph intersects the y-axis. So this is our y-intercept. And another way of thinking about this, well, the equation of the graph is, or the equation of the line is y is equal to mx plus c. So when c is 1, x has to be 0. And if we think about this, or we can think about it another way, when x is 0, what is y? So if this is the equation of our line, 2 times 0, I'm substituting 0 instead of x, plus 1 is going to be equal to y. That will give us our y value. So y is equal to, well, 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. So when x is 0, y is going to be equal to 1. And we can see here, this coordinate over here is 0, 1. Our x value at this point is 0, our y value is 1, and this is the point at which our line intersects the y-axis. Right, and moving on, so this is just highlighting what I just mentioned. And the gradient, so I said the gradient is the change in y over the change in x, or divided by the change in x. So our gradient here is 2. Now, if we have a look here, what is the change in x if we compare two sets of coordinates? So I'm going to compare this coordinate here and this coordinate here. So the change in x is we're adding 1, and then we are going up by 2, or we're adding another 2. So the change in x in this case between the two coordinates is 1, and the change in y is 2. So 2 divided by 1 is simply 2, therefore our gradient is 2. And this would work for any set of coordinates. So if I was to pick this coordinate and this coordinate, again, the change in our x coordinate is going to be plus 1, and the change in the y coordinate is going to be plus 2. So once again, we're going across by 1, we're going up by 2 to get to this coordinate. So the change in y is 2, the change in x is 1, therefore the gradient is 2 divided by 1, which is 2. Another way of thinking about this, if I just rub some of this off, is that this coordinate here is 1, 3, and this coordinate here is 2, 5. So the x value comes first and then the y value. So we can find the change in y by subtracting 5 from 3. So I can do 5, or taking away 3 from 5, I should say. So 5 take away 3, and then to find the change in x, I would have to do 2 take away 1. Now 5 take away 3 is going to give us 2, and 2 take away 1 is going to give us 1. So again, that gives us 2 over 1, which is 2. Now you could have started with these values here, with these coordinates here, and it still wouldn't matter. So for instance, here I started with 5 take away 3, but I could have done, and I'll just do it with a different color pen. I could have done 3 take away 5, but as I've started with this set of coordinates, I would also have to do 1 take away 2 to find the change in x. So I started with 3 for my for the change in y, so I also have to start with 1 for the change in x. Now 3 take away 5 is -2, and 1 minus 2 is going to be -1. Now notice I've got -2 divided by -1. Now two negatives divided by each other give a positive answer. So my gradient is still going to be +2, the same as what I worked out over here. So it doesn't matter which set of coordinates you start with, so long as you get your signs right when you're doing the calculation like this. Or you can just count, as we did earlier, across 1. So we're going across by 1, our x value is changing by 1, and then our y value is going up by 2. All right, so that's the gradient of our line. The gradient of our line is going to be 2, and the y-intercept, as we discussed earlier, is going to be 1. All right, so let's do some practice. So we have a equation of a line here, y equals 2x minus 7. Now you can pause the video, but my question is, what is the gradient and what is the y-intercept? So the gradient is going to be m, so m in this case is 2. So m is going to be 2, and c, the y-intercept, is going to be -7 or -7. So our line is going to intersect the x-axis at the y-axis, I should say, at -7. Let's do another one. So y equals 2x plus 6. Again, m is going to be 2. The gradient of this equation is 2, and the y-intercept is going to be +6. And likewise with this example, now I've got x minus 1. There's nothing in front of the x. When there's no coefficient in front of x, coefficient just means the number in front of the variable. So when there's no number here, that means we have 1x. So our m value, our gradient, is going to be 1, and the y-intercept, or c, is going to be -1. So don't be put off if the equation of the line is given in this format, such as x minus 1. This just means your gradient is going to be 1. All right. And moving on. So some exam style questions. We have a question here. It says a straight line has an equation y equals 3x minus 2. Write down the gradient of the line. So the gradient of the line is going to be, well, I know the equation of a line is y equals mx plus c, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. So m is going to be, the gradient is going to be +3. Or you could have just written 3, it doesn't really matter. And now it says write down the coordinates of the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So what this is asking us is the y-intercept. So at which point does the line intersect or cross the y-axis? Well, that's going to be c, because c is our y-intercept. So the answer here is going to be -2. All right. Now, sometimes you'll be given the equation of a line and you'll be told, and you will be asked to draw the equation of that line for a set of values. Now, if we have a look at this line here, it's y equals 4x minus 4. So my y-intercept, or c, I should say, c, which is my y-intercept, is going to be -4, and the gradient m is going to be +4. Now, to draw this line, we would have to draw a table of values. So here's my table of values, and I want all values, so draw the graph of y equals 4x minus 4 for the values of x from -2 to -3. So what is the value of y when x is -2? What is the value of y when x is -1, and so on? This way we will get a set of coordinates that we will plot, and then we draw a line through those coordinates. So we need to be very good at substituting here. We need to be very, very good at substituting. So I have y equals 4x minus 2. So instead of x, I'm going to substitute this value here, so minus 2. So y is equal to 4 times minus 2. So instead of x, I'm going to substitute minus 2 minus 4. So y is equal to, well, 4 times minus 2, a positive multiplied by a negative will still give me a negative answer. So that's going to be minus 8 minus 4. Now, minus 8 minus 4, this seems a bit tricky. So when you're doing negative number subtractions or additions, always draw yourself a number line. So let's say if this is 0, minus 8 is going to be somewhere here. Then we'll have minus 9, minus 10, minus 11, minus 12, and so on. So I'm starting at minus 8, and I'm subtracting 4. So I'm going to go to the left of my number line. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer is going to be minus 12. So when x is minus 2, y is minus 12. And I'm going to plot this. So at minus 2, when x is minus 2, y is 12. Now let's work out the value of y when x is minus 1. So again, this time I'm going to substitute minus 1 into the equation in place of x. So rather than putting x here, I know my x value is going to be minus 1. So I would do 4 times minus 1, which is minus 4, minus 4. That's going to give me minus 8. So y is going to be equal to minus 8. Now I need to do the same for the value of 0. So when x is 0, what's going to happen? Well, when x is 0, 4 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 4 is minus 4. So that's going to be 0 minus 4, which will simply be minus 4. So my next y value, or y coordinate, is going to be minus 4. Now, notice the pattern here. We are increasing, or we're adding 4 each time. And because this is a straight line graph, the increase will be linear. That means the increase will be by a constant amount. So just by seeing this, I will say that my next y value is going to be 0. So let's substitute y into this equation and see if our y value, let's substitute 1 into this equation and see if our y value is going to be 0. So this time, instead of x, I'm going to substitute 1. So 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 minus 4 is going to be 0. So again, if we see, that's an increase of 4. It's a linear increase. It's a constant increase. So the next y coordinate is going to be 4. Now let's just double check that. So rather than 1, I'm going to substitute 2 now. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 4 is going to be just 4. So my next y value is going to be 4. And the next y value, again, I'm going to say, because we're going up in by a constant amount, adding 4 each time, the next y value is going to be 8. And I'm just going to test it with my equation. So 4 times 3 is equal to 12. And 12 minus 4 is equal to 8. So I know, because my graph is going up by a constant amount, or the y values are increasing by a constant amount, I know I've done this right. So you need to be very good at substitution when you do these problems, and you need to be able to spot a pattern. If somehow one of your numbers, or one of the increases, is not by a constant amount, for example, you go up instead of by 4, you go up by 5, and this value was 5, you should be able to tell that actually you might have made a mistake here, because we're going up by 4, we're going up by 4, and then suddenly we're going up by 5. So there has to be a mistake somewhere in your calculation. So just double check your workings. The next step is to plot your coordinates. So I've already done -2, 12, then I have -1, 8, -1, 8, then I will have 0, -4, -4 that should be, so I'm just going to change this. Whoops, I've made 2 mistakes here actually. I've made 2 very, very big mistakes. I've plotted -2 and +12, whereas it should be -2 and -12. So all of these are actually wrong. I do apologize. So we have -2, -12. Hopefully you would have spotted that. So -2, -12 is over here. Then we have -1, -8, which is over here. Then we have 0, -4, 0, -4, which is going to be here. And now notice we said this value of y-intercept is going to be -4, and the point at which our equation or our line is going to intersect the y-axis is going to be at -4. So this is definitely correct. My next y coordinate is going to be 1, 0. So over here, the next coordinate is going to be 2, 1, 2, 4. So this was just an example of showing you the mistake. So this value should be 4. So 2, 4 is over here. And the next coordinate is going to be 3 and 8. Now, notice something here. Again, the change is, the gradient is 4. Now, is the change also 4 as well? So we're going across by 1, even though we're counting 2 squares, each square is 0.5, because 2 minus 1.5 and then -1. So each square is going up by 0.5. So even though we're counting 2 squares, the difference is actually going to be 1. So the change in x is 1. And the change in y, we're going from -12 to 8. So that's going to be +4. So we said the gradient m is equal to change in y over change in x. So the change in x is we're going up by 1, and the change in y is going up by 4. And 4 divided by 1 is simply 4, and our gradient is also 4. So this graph, if I was to then draw a straight line with a ruler, please make sure you use a ruler to join your coordinates. I've done it freehand, but in an exam, it's imperative that you use a ruler. Then we join up the coordinates, and this is the equation, or this is the graph of our straight line. And it works out because I worked out my y-intercept to be -4, and I worked out my gradient to be +4 by just testing it over here. So this is correct, and we just plotted a graph using a table of values. This is known as a table of values. All right, let's do another example. Again, it says on the grid below, draw the graph of y equals 1 minus 4x for the values of x from -3 to 3. Now notice here, our graph is written in it being in the form of y equals mx plus c. It's in the form of y equals c plus mx. So our gradient in this case, so our m value, our gradient is going to be -4, and our y-intercept is going to be 1. So we can rewrite this as y equals -4x plus 1. Now it's in the form of y equals mx plus c. So don't be put off by it when the y-intercept and a gradient are flipped around. Okay, so now I need to draw my table of values. So here's my table of values for the values of -3 to 3. So I have to have the values of x from -3 all the way to 3. Now I need to do the substitution again. So the equation of the line is y equals, well, we have it here, -4x plus 1. You don't actually need to do this step, but I think it works out a bit better if you do, but it's not necessarily important for you to do it. Now, we need to substitute the x value into this equation. So I'm going to have 4 minus 3 plus 1. Now, the difference here is that I'm multiplying two negative numbers together. Two negative numbers multiplied together give me a positive number. So this is going to be 12 plus 1, which will give me a y coordinate of 13. So when x is -3, y is 13. Now let's try another one, or the next x coordinate. So that's going to be 4 times -2 plus 1 again. Now, minus 4 times -2 is going to be +8. +8 plus 1 is going to be 9. So my y value is going to be 9. And then the next substitution is going to be -1. So that's going to be 4 plus 1, which is 5. Now notice again, there is a pattern emerging. We are subtracting 4 each time. And I'm just going to try this for the value, for the x value of 0. Now I should get 1 for my y value, but let's just test it out using the equation. So if I substitute 0, well, -4 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. So I can be quite confident that this the y coordinates are decreasing by a constant amount of -4. So my next y coordinate is going to be -3. The next y coordinate is going to be -7. And the next y coordinate is going to be -11. So we are subtracting 4 each time. All right, now we just need to plot this. So I'm going to have -3 and 13. So -3 and that's 10, 11, 12, 13. Then I'm going to have -2 and 9. So 9 is going to be over here. Then I'm going to have -1 and 5, which is going to be here. Then I'm going to have 0 and 1, which is going to be over here. And now notice our y-intercept, and this is why I said it's good to rearrange your equation so that it's in the form of y equals mx plus c, because we can immediately tell what the gradient is. So, both the gradient and the y-intercept. Now, the y-intercept we established is 1. And if we have a look at our graph now, the point at which our graph will intersect the y-axis is at 0, 1. So I know this is correct because this is my y-intercept from the equation. Excuse me. And then I'm going to have 1 and -3. So 1 and -3 is going to be over here. Then I'm going to have 2 and -7, which is going to be over here. And then I'm going to have 3 and -11. So across 3, down 11, which is going to be over here. Now let's test our gradient. Now notice that our graph is downward sloping. So this is when you have a downward sloping graph, it means you have a negative gradient. And from this equation, we established that the gradient is negative. So let's pick two coordinates. Let's pick these two. Our y value is going down by 4. And our x value is increasing by 1. So we're going down 4, increasing 1. So we said the gradient, m, is change in y over change in x. And the change in y is -4. The change in x is +1. So that will still give us a negative answer, -4, which is the gradient of the equation of our line. Now, your final step, now that we've tested these coordinates, we can see that they match up with the equation of our line. We just simply need to draw with a ruler. I'm doing it freehand, but with a ruler, you need to join the coordinates up to draw your line. So make sure this bit is done with a ruler. I can't stress that enough. All right, and moving on. So this is drawing graphs using a table of values, but sometimes they might give you the graph and tell you write the equation of the line. So the two things that we need is C and M, because we know the equation of a line is y equals mx plus c. So already I can see my gradient, not my gradient, my y-intercept is going to be +2. So c is equal to +2. Now let's work out the gradient. So I said pick two coordinates. So I'm going to pick this coordinate and this coordinate here. And we are increasing, or our x value is increasing by 2. And our y value is also increasing by 2. So change in y over change in x is our gradient. So that's going to be the change in y is +2. The change in x is also +2. Therefore, my gradient is going to be 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So m is equal to 1. So the equation of my line is going to be y equals 1x, or just x plus 2. And I'm just going to test to see if this works out. So I'm going to pick a set of coordinates. So the set of coordinates I'm going to pick are this one over here. So when x is 2, y is 4. When x is 2, y is 4. So let's test it here. So when x is 2, this is going to be y equals 2 plus 2. Y is therefore equal 4. And that matches up with this coordinate here. Let's try this coordinate over here as well. So when x is 4, y is 6. When x is 4, y is 6. Does that work? So y equals, when x is 4, y is going to be 6. So this is the equation of the line, and this is the correct equation. All right, let's move on to another example. So again, what is the equation of the line? So like I said in the previous example, we need m, the gradient, and we need c, the y-intercept. Now the y-intercept is quite easy to see. This is the point at which the graph intersects the y-axis, so c is going to be equal to 1. Now the gradient, again, pick two coordinates. I'm going to pick this coordinate here and this coordinate over here. So the increase in x is going to be +1, and the increase in y is going to be +3. So in that case, the change m is change in y over change in x. So that's going to be 3 over 1, which is simply 3. So m is equal to 3. Therefore, the equation of the line is going to be y equals 3x plus 1. Now let's test this out by doing some substitution. So I'm going to pick this coordinate here. So when x is 1, y should be 4. When x is 1, y should be 4. So y equals 3 times 1 plus 1, which is equal to 4. So it works when we substitute 1 into this equation, we get a y value of 4. So this equation of the line is correct. So the equation of the line is y equals 3x plus 1. All right, last example for today's lesson. So now we have a graph. Remember, when it's downward sloping, it means the gradient is going to be negative. The gradient is going to be negative. Now again, to write the equation of this line, I need m, the gradient, and I need c, the y-intercept. So a graph is intersecting the y-axis at 1. So c is going to be 1. And what is the gradient? So again, I'm going to pick two coordinates. I'm going to pick this coordinate here and this coordinate over here. Now I would have to go down by 2, so that's -2, and across by 1, +1. So m is change in y over change in x. So the change in y is -2. The change in x is +1. A negative divided by positive is a negative answer. So that's going to be -2. So the equation of my line is going to be -2x plus c, or +1. Now I'm just going to test out my equation. So I know that one of my coordinates is going to be -1, 3. So when x is -1, is y going to be 3? So y equals -2. Instead of x, I'm going to put -1 plus 1. Y therefore equals 2. A negative multiplied by a negative is a positive. So that's going to be 2 plus 1, which is equal to 3. So when x is -1, y is in fact 3. So the equation of this line is also correct. So that will be y equals -2x plus 1. And notice we have a negative gradient. We have a negative gradient because our graph is downwards sloping. Right, boys and girls, I hope you found this useful. The key takeaway here is that the equation of a line is written in the form of y equals mx plus c. M is the gradient, c is the y-intercept. To work out the gradient, you need to find a change in y and divide that by the change in x. And you will also have to be quite good at substitution, where you need to test things or draw a table of values to be able to draw your graph. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very nice day. Bye.